Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Y'all having a good time? That ice cream was great, wasn't it? Yeah, and the posters and the sessions and the presenters. Ice cream. We all scream for ice cream, right? And I must say, the organizing committee did a fantastic job in selecting speakers from all different facets of mathematics. So as you look at our speakers, they're just going to take us through, I think, a neat tour through different parts of the mathematical sciences. And so we're in for a treat this evening with Dr. Nicole Joseph. And I said, you know what? Can I read your bio on Wikipedia? And she was like, what? Okay. I think her bio fits in with what she's going to talk about, because we bring our experiences with us oftentimes as we do this work, whether it's in reaching students, engaging colleagues, and developing new scholarly domains, I'll say, in areas such as Dr. Nicole Joseph has done. So Dr. Nicole Joseph, she's an American mathematician and scholar of mathematics, whose research primarily focuses on the experience of African-American girls and women in mathematics on the effects of white supremacist reaction to their work in mathematics, and on the intersectional nature of educational inequity. She's an associate professor of mathematics education in the Department of Teaching and Learning in the Vanderbilt Peabody College of Education and Human Development. Dr. Joseph is originally from Seattle. After a fallout with a racist teacher in her elementary school, she was moved to the only open class, an advanced and self-paced classroom in which she first developed a love for mathematics. She majored in economics with a minor in mathematics at Seattle University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in business administration in 1993. After a few years in the business world, she began working in the Seattle area as a middle school and elementary school mathematics teacher and as a mathematics coach, and this is from 1999 to 2011. During this period, she also studied at Pacific Oaks College Northwest, which is a former Seattle satellite campus of Pacific Oaks College, a private Quaker college in California. Through Pacific Oaks, she earned a teaching certification for Washington in 2000 and a master's degree in human development in 2003. I mean, I'm just seeing in her path this, I want to learn this, I want to do this, and that curiosity that she follows. In 2011, Dr. Joseph completed a PhD in curriculum and instruction at the University of Washington. Her dissertation, Black Students in Mathematics Achievement, a mixed method analysis of in-school and out-of-school factors shaping student success. She was supervised by Dr. James Banks. In the same year, she earned a national certification in adolescent mathematics teaching through the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. So after completing her doctorate, she joined the University of Denver, and then she moved to Vandy in 2016 and was tenured there as an associate professor in 2021. And as we all are aware, Dr. Joseph was the winner of the 2023 Louise Hayes Award of the Association for Women in Mathematics, recognized for her contributions to the mathematics education that reflect the values of taking risks and nurturing students' academic talent. So I welcome to the stage Dr. Joseph, who's going to talk about making Black girls count in mathematics education, a Black feminist vision of transformative teaching. And I forgot to say, she has the best glasses.
Can everyone hear me? It's awesome. Thank you, President Washington and the organizing committee for selecting me to give this keynote for the 2023 Association of Women in Mathematics Research Symposium. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be considered a distinguished mathematics educator who has made significant contributions to research and education. And for that, I do not take this moment lightly nor for granted. I believe that I was born and put on this earth for such a time as this, a time to contribute to the collective educational history of African American people and Black girls and women specifically. Where do I have to aim this to make it go?
I don't know, but I'm sitting here, so I'll make it go.
Okay. My work has been inspired by several Black women, both in mathematics education and mathematics. This evening, because I believe in giving credit where credit is due, I would like to just highlight just a few of those Black women on the slide, both deceased and alive. Their stories about their educational experiences in mathematics contributed and continues to contribute really to a decade of thinking about how to better support Black girls in the K-12 space. So, does anybody recognize anybody on the? Yes, so let's call their names out. Let's call their names out. Dr. Washington. Who else? Yes. Who else? Yes. Yes, Dr. Mays, yes. Gloria Gilmer. And when I registered yesterday, I ran into Dr. Jones, Dr. Dobson, and Dr. Walker. I had never met them before, but immediately there was connection. And we took a picture, and I said, you know, last night I was, doing the slides. I said, I'm gonna add our picture there. And so I hope that we stay connected. So why, let me see, I think the next slide. No. I do this work through, next slide. There we go. I do this work, sorry, I'm a Black girl cartographer, and this is not my language. This is a scholar by the name of Tamara Butler. She has named this idea Black girl cartographer, which means that I identify as a Black girl and that I have deep concern and advocacy for Black girls' health, their lives, their well-being, and their ways of being broadly, and in mathematics learning spaces specifically. I'm a critical scholar, a pedagogue, and an activist doing this work in an unapologetic way. I do this work through the Joseph Mathematics Education Lab, which is my lab at Vanderbilt, my teaching, my research and scholarship, and I founded the Tennessee March for Black Women in STEM. This is the 7th year. This is an annual march that brings really the community together to essentially share what I've learned in my research. So that's one of the ways that I've been trying to translate my research. Overall, in my research, teaching, and activism, I think at the intersection of theory and practice. What use is my research if it does not translate to inspire educators to think, to care, and to act in ways that transform the lives of Black girls so that they have limitless possibilities in their mathematics education trajectories? At this point of intersection between theory and research, it matters because sometimes institutions, especially Research One institutions, do not always recognize the practice of service work. In May of 21, as Dr. Washington shared, I got the call from my dean. My colleagues at Vanderbilt, a very elite institution with a known racist and complex past with Black people and communities, chose to recognize my research and scholarship through the tenure process. Earning tenure and promotion with a research agenda specifically focused on Black girls and women's mathematics experiences, their identity development in these mathematics classrooms, elevating their intersectional oppression that happens through gendered anti-Blackness and white supremacist ideologies and practices was no small feat. However, they never said this topic is too narrow. They never said you need a comparison group or this work is too radical. Vanderbilt honored my work at the highest level. This means a lot to me because conducting research, writing, and publishing manuscripts, engaging in practice and activist activities and projects, and giving presentations such as this meant that I had to be bold, I had to be unrepentant, and fearless. I do this work because Black girls and women have mathematical stories worth telling, and they deserve our labor. So, in my new book here, Making Black Girls Count in Math Education, a Black feminist vision of transformative teaching, I take up a lot of space for Black girls and women. It is a labor of love. I hope it transforms how we as a broader society and mathematics educators view Black girls and women. And y'all can get it on Amazon or at the Harvard Education Press website. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, why focus on Black girls? Black girls are 5.5 times likely to be more suspended than white girls and more likely to receive suspensions than any other gender or race. So they are now leading these suspensions more than Black boys, which at one point they were the leading group. In Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois, Black girls are 8.5 times more likely than white girls to be suspended. In our capital, where Black girls represent 73% of the girls enrolled in school, but 94% of all girls suspended, they are an astounding 17.8 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. This disproportionate discipline starts as early as preschool, with Black girls making up 20% of girls enrolled, but 54%, over half, of the girls suspended from preschool. Now, these statistics are astounding, and they come from this report that was published by the National Women's Law Center. Another study called Girlhood Interrupted, the Erasure of Black Girls' Childhood, was published by the Georgetown Law Center on Poverty and Inequality. In this groundbreaking study, Epstein, Blake, and Gonzalez provide data for the first time, revealing that adults surveyed viewed Black girls as adults. This is a phenomenon called adultification. Raise your hand if you've heard that word before. Adultification, yes. This study sought to determine whether adults assign Black girls qualities that render them more like adults and less innocent than their white peers. To do this, they adapted a scale assessing childhood innocence that was originally developed by a scholar named Goff and his colleagues. Epstein, Blake, and Gonzalez's scale was comprised of items associated with adultification and stereotypes about Black girls and women. Similar to the original study, they divided the period of childhood and adolescence into 4 age brackets: 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and ages 15 to 19. They surveyed about 325 adults from various racial and ethnic backgrounds and different educational levels across the US. And these people were recruited from an online educational service to obtain a community sample of adults. Participants were predominantly white and female. 39% were between the ages of 25 and 34 years old. Information regarding respondents' occupants was not assessed, but 69% held a degree beyond a high school diploma. If you think about this sample, they are mainly white women, which is the large majority of the population that teach in education in our public schools. Overall, findings showed this on the right side. Black girls need less nurturing. Black girls need less protection. Black girls need to be supported less. Black girls need to be comforted less. Black girls are more independent. Black girls know more about adult topics. Black girls know more about sex. Next slide. So now if you look at this graph, what do you notice? The adultification bias towards Black girls starts at the tender age of 5. So when adults look at a 5-year-old little girl, they don't see a little girl. They see an adult, according to this study with these 325 people, okay? And I would argue that that is why we see so many preschool Black girls who are literally getting arrested and criminalized in our schools. Next slide. These are just 2 examples. If you were to Google Black girls and arrests, it is unreal what will show up. But these are just 2 examples. This is a full video, but because of time, I'm gonna not show the video. But this little girl, Akia, you know, had a tantrum at school. What 5-year-old do you know that doesn't have a tantrum? I don't know any 5-year-olds that don't have a tantrum. But they decided that her tantrum meant that the police needed to be called. And so when the police got there, the handcuffs were too big for her hands, and so they used zip ties to arrest a 5-year-old Black girl. And these are just 2 examples of what is actually going on in our public schools, and this is why we need to do something about it. The other video is from a New York Success Academy school, where it's a video of them learning mathematics. They're doing like counting and learning how to split numbers. We probably call it decomposing. So the little girl gets in trouble and sent to the naughty chair when she doesn't count it correctly. The other thing that the teacher does is takes her paper and rips it in front of the class, and that is a strategy in this school called rip and redo. This morning when I was listening to Dr. Pierce take us through her method of moments and this beautiful process of thinking about mathematics in different ways, the first thing she said was that most of what I do is failure. But what we teach and how we teach in K-12 mathematics, somehow we just expect everything to be perfect. We don't allow students to make mistakes. And she said she had been working on this for 15 years, working on that project to prove the method of moments that she gave us. So something to think about. Next slide. Another reason to focus on Black women and girls is because there's a national confluence of things coming together: philanthropy, research, and social justice movements, specifically around Black girls. Organizations are starting to notice these issues and putting forth efforts to address the oppression Black women and girls face in our schools and our US society. Goldman Sachs, one of the largest investment banking companies on the globe, has committed $10 billion for direct investment to Black women and girls. You can look this up. The campaign is called 1 Million Black Women and is comprised of investments focused on key moments in Black women's lives from early childhood through retirement. The investment areas include healthcare, education, housing, small business, all aiming to narrow the opportunity gaps and positively impacting the lives of at least 1 million Black women. What is inspiring about what Goldman Sachs is doing is that they are hosting these listening sessions to solicit input from across the country and to learn about the investments, the resources and programs that can be most impactful in serving Black women and transforming communities. That's a little different from what researchers usually do. We usually come in when we already know the answers, but they are doing listening sessions to learn how to best support. Some of their research has already shown that one of the fastest ways to accelerate change and effectively begin to address the wealth gap is to listen to and invest in Black women. So if you did not know, Black women make like 43 cents on the dollar in comparison to a white male for the exact same number of years in experience, and the exact same level of education. The other organization that I want to highlight is Black Girl Freedom Fund. It is an unprecedented effort that calls for an investment of $1 billion over the next decade. The CEO and founder is Dr. Monique Morris, who wrote a very popular book called Push Out that ended up being a movie. She is teamed up with an incredible list of Black women, Tarana Burke, who is the founder of the Me Too movement, grant makers for Girls of Color, and the Miss Foundation, and others. I encourage all of you to check out these organizations to learn more about what is happening and the investments that are being done for Black women and girls. So centering Black girls as knowledge producers through critical analysis of their experiences is a political move, but it is absolutely necessary. So in my talk today, I aim to bridge, build, and inspire people, all of you, to listen, to reflect, to ask questions, and then to act in solidarity with Black girls and their families. I strongly recommend that you work in communities of practice to engage in this work. This is not solo work. This is being in solidarity and in community with Black girls and their families. Next slide. So let me get somebody to read this. Who got a teacher voice in here? Who got a teacher voice? Teacher voice? Can I get someone to read this? Thank you.
Black girlhood is freedom, and Black girls are free. As an organizing construct, Black girlhood makes possible the affirmation of Black girls' lives, and if necessary, their liberation. Black girlhood as a spatial intervention is useful for making our daily lives better, and therefore changing the world as we currently know it.
So I would love for one person to just react to that. What does that say to you? Be bold, be brave, you'll get an A. What does it say to you? I heard somebody. It's sad that we need to do it, but we do need to do it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Next slide. My aim today is to elevate the importance of understanding Black girlhood in mathematics learning spaces. First, it is important to understand what Black girlhood is and where you can go to learn about Black girlhood. These are just a few texts. There are so many more texts in addition to a host of journal articles and blogs where you can learn about Black girlhood. You're not gonna learn about Black girlhood from like math education research. We have some, but it's not as in depth. So as a scholar thinking about how do I bring what I know about what it means to learn mathematics, to teach mathematics and Black girlhood, I had to read deeply into like gender and women's studies and Black girlhood studies. Like I had to get the knowledge from over there in order to theorize in this, at this intersectional space. The other place that you can learn is to talk to Black girls and women about their experiences, about who they are. Lived experience is very important, so that's another place where you can learn. So a major educational problem that my work examines is the disproportionate underrepresentation of Black girls in mathematics. I have another talk where I do a 20-year trend from the data from NSF to show the number of bachelor's degrees in mathematics, the numbers of associate degrees in mathematics, masters and PhDs, and I will just tell you that the numbers are bleak. If somebody wants that data, I am happy to send it to you, but there is severe underrepresentation of Black girls in mathematics. So what do we know about what it can mean to be a Black girl learning mathematics? What are her experiences in schooling context and mathematics classroom specifically? Next slide. First, we should note how this problem is being studied. right? So one, this is not a research line of inquiry that we see all the time, which is part of, was part of my narrative when I went up for tenure and wrote my statement, is that, listen, people aren't talking about this. What we always know about math and Black girls is simply just these comparison studies around achievement data, but there's no complexity to try to understand what is happening, right? Dr. Cosby and I wrote a review of literature on the K-12 Black girls math learning between 1999 and 2019 and found only 11 empirical studies. Now, because it's 2023, there are probably a few more, but at the time there were 11. Second, many existing empirical studies are single access analyses rather than multiplicative or intersectional, which means that they're gonna look at race only and include like Black boys, or they look at gender only and include, Black girls, white girls, like all different types of girls mixed in. But that's not the same as saying Black girls' math identities, for example, right? Dr. Frank and I also have called for math education researchers and anybody doing work on Black learners and teachers to also use a historical framing when studying African American students, because we know that African Americans have not always had, and still to a certain extent don't have, access. And it's important to see the ways in which our country has constructed and socialized the discipline of mathematics, the teaching and learning of mathematics as a very exclusionary and white male space. Next slide. Now I am going to discuss 3 themes from the literature that help us answer my research question about Black girls' underrepresentation. For each theme, I'm gonna give just a small discussion about each one. So the first theme is that the US math system does not love Black girls. It's intentionally designed to erase and dehumanize them. For example, there are studies where math teachers and science teachers are calling them too talkative, too loud, encouraging them to go into, social areas rather than the scientific areas of STEM and science and math. Constant comparing them to white femininity, and limited access to gifted programs. These negative experiences contribute to their underrepresentation. It fragments their mathematics identities, and they are pushed out of mathematics. Next slide. In her recent study in 2022, Ray conducted a 3-year longitudinal study that explored how Black girls experience the classroom and found that schools function as hostile institutions for Black girls. 2 ways that she identified included 1, gendered racial harassment from teachers, and 2, the erasure of intellect. Ray defined the erasure of intellect as the teacher's active resistance to acknowledging Black girls' achievement even when they excelled, as per the white middle class standards reflected, in school testing and ability grouping. Ray asked one of the teachers, Miss Josephine, who identified as white, about one of her brilliant students, Eliza. Eliza is tall, slender, mostly quiet Black girl, and she was at the top of her class in English and math for 4th and 5th grade. Ray asked the teacher, so what do you think about Eliza, transitioning on to middle school? Miss Josephine commented and immediately began to compare Eliza to Spring, and Spring was a white girl. Well, the thing is, Eliza works a lot like Spring. She just has this knack for reading. She is continuously reading, and her mom doesn't care for her, and grandma is her everything, but she has a love for it, reading. Eliza is more like, does the work, and same with math. She is religiously doing her work. So naturally, Ray is like, I'm confused. I don't really see any difference. Like, what are you talking about? Can you say more? Well, Spring will do extra reading. And Eliza, she reads what's assigned. And well, you know, she'll read extra, but like not out of the love of the discipline. Also, maybe it's because Eliza is responsible for her sisters, but like that she is at the top? Yeah, no, that's kind of fake. Well, I don't mean like fake, but like imposed, you know? So embedded in this particular teacher's commentary and perspectives is the erasure of Eliza's intellect and the constant comparing to white girls. That is an empirical finding that is unique for Black girls in our US schools. Next slide, please. The second theme is that the US math education system, and I'm talking about the culture, I'm talking about the community, the discourse, the policies, it is structurally exclusionary. We know this because we had to do Association for Women of Mathematics, right? It's oppressive and it upholds gendered anti-Blackness, white supremacy, and whiteness. Pre- and in-service teachers, you know, in the K-12 system and higher education faculty have no structural incentive to engage in the work of critically examining these issues and how they relate to instructors' teaching practices and Black girls' learning outcomes. Professional development in K-12, and I know what I'm talking about because I was coaching, I've done a lot of PD, is non-existent in these areas. And tenure track faculty, you can forget it because they are always protected. So there's no like structural incentive to really support, you know, this work. So Lim published a study in 2008 about two Black girls, Stella and Rachel, and their experiences specifically in math classrooms. Stella and Rachel both had the same teacher, Miss Oliver. Miss Oliver was white, she was in her 40s. And Rachel was in the regular class, and Stella was in the advanced level class. So Miss Oliver, you know, she was known as like the most effective and respected math teacher like in the whole county. The purpose of the study was to delineate how race, class, and gender influenced Stella's and Rachel's mathematics learning experiences and their math identity formation, what was like shaping their ability to engage in mathematics as strong, see themselves as strong math learners. Miss Oliver was really unimpressed with students who she felt were apathetic, and she actually viewed Stella and Rachel as apathetic. She asserted that these unambitious students were from families with little parental support, though Stella was a hardworking, meticulous math student who was also full of personality and loved to sing when around families and friends. Stella worked so hard to seek the approval of her teacher, Miss Oliver. When you look through a Black girl's specificity, Stella made intentional decisions to navigate Miss Oliver and the math class. Stella was clear about ways of being in math class. Specifically, she adopted a very quiet and sweet girl, you know, identity, and constantly self-monitored her behaviors. Why? So that she would be accepted by Miss Oliver. It appeared that Stella understood her full identities were not welcome in Miss Oliver's class. Adopting an identity that was not authentic came at a cost, because despite Stella's favorable view of her math teacher, Stella's math identity was fractured from the high anxiety she felt between what she perceived as acceptable and who she really was. Stella was in the advanced math classroom, but Miss Oliver characterized her as unmotivated and passive and decided not to recommend her to the next higher level math class the following year. And she did that even though Stella's test scores and grades were comparable to her high-achieving white peers. Miss Oliver prided herself on having high expectations for all of her students, yet she was completely unaware that Stella was not bringing her full self, her full Black girlhood, into the math learning space. And consequential decisions were made for Stella with this partial knowledge by Miss Oliver, which forever will shape Stella's math identity development and her trajectory. So the takeaway is that it is important for math teachers to understand Black girlhood, period. You can see what happens to Black girls when math teachers and educators do not hold competencies or critical consciousness about what it can mean to be a Black girl in U.S. society learning mathematics. The third and final slide, did you have hands? Mm-hmm. Okay. The third and final slide is that Black girls seldom have access to high quality mathematics teachers, liberatory curriculum, and transformative instruction. Common experiences are worksheets, rote learning, teacher lectures. Now let me just say this for the record. There is nothing wrong with a worksheet in and of itself. But when you have a worksheet as your main learning experience, that's problematic. The girls experience these things in part because teachers think that they're just not capable. They have low expectations and oftentimes carry these biases with them. So the first study up here is my own study that I did a literature review of 63 studies where I sought to understand the factors that support Black girls' persistence in mathematics. And what I found was that unless schools disrupt the traditional way math teaching and learning is conducted for Black girls, so like I said, you know, the worksheets and the uninspiring curriculum, they will continue to have fragmented identities and low levels of participation, development, and achievement, limiting their future STEM opportunities in community, higher ed, workforce. And let me just say this, some scholars have argued that, you know, STEM is like this neoliberal project and that it is not in service of a full, richer life, but solely about economic gains and power. There are people that argue that. While on the one hand, I agree that neoliberalism should not be the sole focus, I also think that scholars who position themselves that argue that speak from a place of privilege and may not understand the deeper social political context for many Black families who dream of a different life for their children in terms of economic mobility. So this narrative about the desire for more STEM in our schools and society as an economic organizer of human society, it really does require a closer interrogation of the nature, purposes, outcomes associated with STEM across time, context, and people. When we put this narrative in conversation with a variation of Black girls' math experiences, you know, in our schools, you can get a more complex picture and a more nuanced picture. In the second study, Francis and colleagues asked 268 school counselors to evaluate student transcripts that were identical except for the name on the profile and to decide whether to recommend each student for an AP Calculus course, as well as provide an academic rating about, you know, how prepared are you. Each counselor received at random a profile with a name designed to be suggestive of a Black person and a white student, both male and female. So here are some examples. The Black female name was Deja Jackson. The Black male's name was DeAndre Washington. The white female was Hannah Douglas, and the white male was Jake Connor. So 86% of the counselors were women, a characteristic of the school counseling in general. Roughly 71% of the sample were white, 17% were Black, and 15% were Hispanic of any race. What they found was that the Black female transcript was the least likely to be recommended for AP Calculus, and it also had the lowest preparation score. The third study conducted by Koper, Ginturk, and colleagues is kind of similar to the Francis study. Their study explored whether teachers' evaluations of their students' math ability or performance, if it was accurate or if there were some implicit bias. They used a RTC. There was about 390 folks to examine and separate these factors. They explored teachers' evaluation of 18 mathematical solutions to which gender and race-specific names had been randomly assigned. Their study concluded that when assessing students' math ability, biases against Black, Hispanic, and white female students were revealed, with the greatest biases, as you can guess, against the Black girl sounding names. Next slide. So what can we do about it? I'm calling for a campaign for Black girls' mathematics teaching and learning. Centering their needs in mathematics teaching and learning is important for their critical awareness and political education, identity development, and positive visioning of themselves. The goal is to use humanizing pedagogies, realizing their genius, excellence, and brilliance, and make it impossible for them to fail. This is a model that I developed called the Black Feminist Mathematics Pedagogies, or Black FMP. It is not a panacea, it is one model. Black FMP is a model for radical hope. Among its components are mathematics education, history, persistence, critical consciousness, and humanity, to name a few. Black FMP has cognitive resolve, engaging planned collective action among mathematics teachers, Black girls, their families, and all other educators and stakeholders invested in Black girls' liberation. This model is receptive of political efficacy and supported by courage and collective Black girl excellence. This model is more than optimism and resists pessimism because it addresses how Black girls, traditionally stripped of their ways of knowing, imagine how to survive and then venture forth into thriving in mathematics learning. My framework has 4 dimensions, and you will see them: critical consciousness, robust mathematics identities, academic and social integration, and ambitious math instruction. Usually people say, well, isn't this just good teaching? Ambitious instruction is just good teaching, absolutely. Because I don't think any of our students really get the type of mathematics instruction that they deserve in the K-12 system. But when you begin to add these other 3 bubbles, now you're talking about transformative teaching for Black girls. These dimensions are interdependent, and it is not enough to engage in just one, especially if the user's outcomes align with supporting Black girls' limitless possibilities in mathematics. Overall, the framework is designed with Black girlhood as its centripetal force and is a tool for mathematics teachers, general educators, curriculum developers, Black girls and their families, and any other constituency that says they are aiming to do liberation work and care about Black girls. You can see this article for more information on how that framework was developed. Next slide. So Black girls need several solutions that can be thought about at different levels. Dr. Luis Leiva is my colleague at Vanderbilt. He developed a model or theoretical model for ideas and thinking about like what's interpersonal, what's more structural, and what's more ideological. So I'm borrowing his to sort of categorize, if you will, these needs, because sometimes people can say, oh, I think I can do that, or I can do that part. Black girls need funding agencies to establish ongoing and significant support for projects focused on Black girls and women's experiences. They need racially conscious mathematics instructors who share power, make the curriculum interesting and challenging, build caring and authentic relationships with students, hold high expectations, and allow humor and social integration. Black girls need their racially conscious math instructors to also have strong math content and to use a rigorous mathematics curriculum that is inquiry-based and culturally relevant. When I talk to girls, they're like, we want to be challenged. We want to talk to each other about what we are learning. You know, we want to use, they don't say the word manipulatives, but we want to use hands-on learning and projects. But what they are getting are worksheets. This means that teachers should stop using worksheets as the main learning activity. Robust pedagogies can include problem posing, that's different from problem solving. Problem posing, classroom discourse, small group work. I mean, technology is amazing, using technology to like model mathematical ideas. Black girls don't get to do these types of things. So how do you develop an interest and a curiosity around mathematics if you're not getting these types of experiences? I wrote down words. I was so inspired by Dr. Pierce's talk this morning. I was writing down little words that she was saying. She was saying, and then I got curious about this. And then I got kind of tickled about that. And, you know, just listening to the adjectives that she was using to talk about her process of proving this method of moments. Next slide. Black girls need school systems and the people who work in them to treat Black girls with dignity, understanding that they are complex individuals who have a right to bring their full humanities to learning spaces and contexts. Black girls need strong cultural brokers or advocates, whatever word you want to use, for assessing educational resources such as recommendations for gifted and talented programs. Y'all know that it's the teachers oftentimes that make a recommendation. Sometimes the counselor does that. And so there needs to be a better process around that. Black girls need policies that create opportunities for intersectional interventions. So an example of that could be a math club that is specifically associated for Black girls. So at the last part of my study, I'm going to talk about let you guys in on the work that I'm doing now. So I'm partnering with a school district, and I had agreed through my money. It wasn't NSF funded. It was funded by AirDev, which is more like R&D. So you can do what you want with the money. So I donated several $1,000s of my grant to a school that had been on the the bad list. I don't know what it's called. You know, the list where, your school doesn't, everybody's not passing. For the first time in 15 years in mathematics. So I am giving them this money, and I told them, you have to spend this money on like enrichment in mathematics for girls of color in the school. The school district that I'm working with is like 99% Black. So that's just an example of a type of intervention. And Dr. Pierce, we were talking afterwards, and I was just sharing with her, and she told me that she runs a math club. She has a high school daughter, and she does a math club for her daughter and her friends. So those are the types of things, that we could be doing to engage Black girls. Black girls need university-level mathematics professors to reject the idea of neutrality of mathematics learning, but understand the role racialized and gendered oppression has played in preventing many Black women from feeling like they belong in mathematics and science, which can push them out. So just giving Dr. Leiva's work another shout out, he has incredible work. He does specifically focus on students of color, queer students of color, and their experiences in STEM, mathematics, engineering, different disciplines. And he is one of the only people that I know that is studying the classroom at the undergraduate level. Like, we do that in K-12 all the time, but we don't have a lot of research that is examining what is actually happening in calculus classes. excuse me, at the university level. And of course, some of the things that he has found is that there are these racialized and gendered experiences for these queer students of color, and he's also studying the math faculty. And it's very interesting, you should read some of his work, of the things that he is finding that, you know, faculty just believe that they're saying the right thing when they stand up in front of the class and say, okay, there's, you know, 50 of you guys, but, you know, in 2 weeks it's only gonna be 3. Because, you know, this is a challenging class, and, you know, if you can't get it, you might wanna think about going to a lower math class. They really believe in their heart that they're doing the right thing. But his work has shown when it lands on someone who's racialized and gendered through society, it says, you don't belong here, right? So that's just an example. Next slide. Where do we go from here? Here are calls for research, both at the practice and research levels. Next slide. These are things that you can do on Monday. I always say that so people can know these are like things that can happen like immediately. We need state data of like all of the consequential metrics that the world cares about, like math course enrollment, GT programming, ACT scores. We need all that basic data for Black girls. District of Columbia, Georgia, this state, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi have some of the largest enrollments of Black girls in the K-12 school system. What this could do is give us a snapshot of what's actually happening around these things, which can help us make more targeted changes in the policies. We also need local school contexts to disaggregate their data that documents successful Black girls' math learning opportunities. So we also need to figure out what is happening with Black girls that are being successful. Of course, metrics that people care about is, are they, you know, passing the state exam? Do they have a high GPA? And those types of things. So I'm saying, okay, that's fine. But let's also include some more expansive things to look at persistence, you know, to interest, self-efficacy. In my dissertation, I asked students, how do you define success in mathematics? Not one student said, because I'm getting an A. Not one student said, because I, you know, passed this test. They said things like, I'm taking this calculus class and I'm struggling, you know. The fact that I'm persisting, that I haven't dropped this, you know, dropped these classes. That's what they considered success, right? Was that they didn't give up. It had nothing to do with grades. We need local school data on Black girls in school punishment, where I started this talk. We need to know what is happening with the girls around suspensions. And it would be great if we were able to know, are these math classes that these Black girls are being, you know, kicked out of, and something's happening in the math classes, the science classes? We need development and implementation of math teacher ed programs and professional development that disrupt gendered anti-Black sentiments, ideologies, and practices. So in this country, girls, no matter who you are, Black, white, zebra, you don't belong in math, you don't do math, right? And in this country, we also believe that Black people are smart in math. So Black girls are at that intersection, and that is what makes them so vulnerable, is because they are suffering from 2 major marginalized identities, specifically in mathematics. Okay, next slide. I got 3 slides left. On the empirical side, you know, we need large-scale, quantitative research studies to document what's going on in schools as it relates to Black girls. We also need deep ethnographic and longitudinal research of studies of Black girls' experiences, including things like what's propelling the success of Black girls and women in math? And does that change over time? Structures that hinder or foster Black girls and women's development and participation in math, Black girls and women's strategies of persistence and resistance. We need cross-examination of context-specific factors that impact Black girls. And we need non-institutionalized math practices that black girls and women engage in every day in their lives, but is seldom recognized. So like doing math, using math in cooking or whatever it is, like sort of that practical knowledge that is happening in spaces outside of school, you know, that knowledge is not welcomed in schools. Which I don't understand why, you know, teachers don't use that knowledge to help bridge the gap for these concepts and ideas that we have to learn as part of our scope and sequence, you know, in the K-12. All right, here are some high-level takeaways on the last one, which is, you know, there's push out by systems and ideologies and practices. We got anti-blackness, patriarchy, and white supremacy. These are things that are shaping the underrepresentation of black girls in mathematics specifically. What do we know? That these racialized and gender stereotypes can get in the way of their abilities to develop into strong mathematicians. What can we do? Join Dr. Joseph in the Black feminist movement for black girls and math learning. Study black girlhood. Reject stereotypes about black girls. See black girls as children, not adults. Create a more relaxed environment in the math class. I mean, the girls are saying, listen, can we just tell a joke? Can we sit in a circle? Can we, you know, laugh while we are finding the line of best fit? You know, it's like, why do we have to be so quiet, in rows? It's boring, right? And they want to be able to have a vibe, that's their language, with their math teachers. And I'm learning that when they have that vibe with their math teachers and can talk to their math teachers about anything, math or otherwise, they take more risks. They participate more in math. They try harder. They, you know, do all the things that we are asking them to do in these math classes. And then, you know, teach ambitiously. If you can't do nothing else but teach ambitiously, that will help. That's not gonna get us to transformative, but that will at least help to get rid of the worksheets. And then create conditions where you make it impossible for black girls to fail. All right. This is the project that I was telling you. All I'll say about it is that it was incredible. I have been working with a psychometrician. I didn't realize that I enjoy psychometrics. I had no clue. But designing a survey, I'm designing an instrument to measure math identity is challenging work. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm at the tail end of this, trying to validate it. Essentially, there was a math identity measure before I started, but it did not have the complexities that I was seeing theoretically in my smaller studies. So I decided to design my own and to bring those two additional theoretical concepts, intersectionality assets and intersectionality barriers. So my model of math identity is a 3-factor model and has those additional components. So stay tuned for that probably in the next, I don't know, 8 months or so. Validating has been challenging because we got bots that got a hold of our link, and combing through 3,000 is a lot of work. So anyway, that's what I'm doing next, and I'm essentially hoping that this measure will then be adopted and supported through schools to support black girls, and then be translated into teacher training that can help them interpret what this measure is saying about how black girls can strengthen their math identities. The last slide I would like to close us out with. This is a slide, this was a tweet that my colleague Terry Watson tweeted, and I used to have the date. I think it was like 2019. Dear educators, black girls are not loud. They want to be heard. Black girls are not seeking attention. They are seeking a connection. Black girls are not aggressive. They know what they want. Black girls are not bossy. They are leaders. And last, Black girls are not adults. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph, for that inspiring presentation, and also thank you for telling my story in K-12 mathematics. Also in graduate school in mathematics, I saw the same evolution, and then now in the workplace. So thank you for telling our stories, and thank you for advocating for us all to be a part of the solution. So yeah, just let's thank them one more time. Thank you. So I've been told we have buses outside, so we won't have a Q&A, but she will be around, and she'll be here, so please come and chat with her. I think we have multiple buses, is that right? We have 2 buses. That is multiple. And it's been a day. It's been a fun day. And the party's not over, because at 6:30 to 8 p.m., we have a reception networking at the hotel lower level. This is where you connect with people, talk with people, get some digital cards, and just have a community. So please, I look forward to seeing you in the lower level Centennial 1 at the hotel. Breakfast tomorrow is at the Embassy Hall, which is different from today's